Hey everybody, it's Tom, WA2IVD. It's kind of a cloudy and cold day here in Kansas today. And on a cold day, there is nothing better than sitting down with your favorite hot beverage and a good book to curl up with. Now, of course, I'm half kidding here because I don't think most of you would probably want to sit down and read from cover to cover the ARRL Handbook. At the same time, I think some people are a little intimidated by this book, and there is really no reason that you should be. This is actually a tremendous resource, whether you are brand new to ham radio or you've been doing it most of your life, like I have. This particular one is the 100th anniversary edition. I believe this came out in 2023, so it's a couple years old now. But the information in it, some of it is actually timeless, and some of it is updated on a regular basis, which is why they keep coming out with new editions. Let me just show you here. This is the very first handbook that I ever bought. I was in high school when I got this book. This is the 1976 Radio Amateur's Handbook. And you'll notice that the new one is quite a bit larger than this one was. And no, it's not because I have a large print edition now. They keep growing it and adding more information. There's actually a lot of stuff that's the same. The sections on AC circuits and DC circuits and a lot of electrical and electronic fundamentals, they haven't changed because that really hasn't changed much in the last 50 years or probably the last 100 years. But there's a lot of new stuff. The new book has a section on software-defined radios because those didn't exist when I got this one. There's things about tubes in here. Not very much. Tubes were kind of on the way out by the time I got this book. But I don't think there's anything about tubes in the new book, or very, very little if there's anything. Maybe something on high-power amplifiers. So they do keep updating it. You probably don't need to get one every single year, but I get one probably every 3 to 5 years. I'll get a new edition because there's enough new material in it that it's worth it. And again, it is just a great reference. So let's take a look at some of the things you can find in the handbook. In the introduction, I mentioned that the handbook has been getting larger because they've included more content. One kind of cool thing is the original handbook. This is the very first one that was printed in 1926. Now, this is a reprint. When the 100th anniversary edition came out, if you ordered the hardcover version of it, they included a reprint of this original handbook. And I can tell you construction techniques have changed a lot since that originally came out. And they have some cool ads in here. There was a bunch of ads in the back, and some of those are fun to look at. So if you ever get a chance to look at one of these, it's kind of fun. Before we go through some of the things that are in the handbook, let's look at how you get one. The first place you can get one is directly from ARRL, and you can get it as a 6-volume set, or you can just get a single softcover large version, or you can get it as an ebook. And it's $69.95, so it's not a real cheap book. No matter which way you get it, all 3 options are $69.95. And if you get either of the paper versions, they include a coupon to download the ebook. So you're better off getting the paper one, even if you don't think you would ever use it much, because you get the electronic version included with it. You can also get it from Amazon, $69.95, same price. And it looks like they just have the 6-volume set. I don't know if they may have the softcover version too. I'll have a link for these in the description from ARRL, from Amazon. You can also get it from pretty much all of the major national ham radio stores, DX Engineering, HRO, Gigaparts, so on. So it's easy to find. it is kind of expensive, but it is a reference book that you're going to keep for a long time. So it's really not that expensive in the long term. But if you don't want to pay that money for it, you can look for them at Hamfests. Sometimes you'll find them used at Hamfest flea markets, and actually for pretty good prices. Maybe a couple of editions out of date, but as I said, there's a lot of information that doesn't change, so that may be fine. And the other place that you can look is your local library. This is the Olathe Public Library, the next largest town up the road from me, and they have the handbook here. They have the ARRL operating manual, and probably if I do some searches, they've got even more books. So if you want to just take a look at one or sign one out for free, check out your local library. So those are some ways to get it. Now, let's take a look at some of the cool stuff that's inside. This is the electronic version of the 100th anniversary edition that I showed you in the introduction. And this edition has, and sorry for all the fast scrolling here, but I just want to get toward the end. This has 27 chapters, plus it's got some online content. There's some projects and accessories. So 27 chapters plus. And part of what you get with the electronic version is there's a number of handy programs, like for doing math for antennas. They've got some programs that figure lengths out and things for you. There's an antenna analyzer. I think there's like if you're designing a beam antenna, there's programs for that. I think all of the software is Windows, so if you're a Mac or Linux user, sorry, but there's also indexes to a bunch of online content as well. So it's pretty full-featured. So what are some of the things that you might do or that you might use the handbook for? Let's say you're going to do a mobile installation and you haven't installed anything mobile before. And let's say you've got an electric vehicle. Well, there's a section here in the Building a Station chapter, that's chapter 24, that talks about electric vehicles. It gives you a little diagram here showing how the batteries and the power electronics are arranged in them. Talks about some of the high voltage hazards. Talks about 12 volt power in the vehicles and how you get it or how it's created. Some of them have a small battery. Some of them have a little DC to DC converter and don't have a small battery. So they give you some helpful tips here. And they also give you some other places to look. And then it talks about antennas in electric vehicles. So pretty handy little reference if you're looking for that kind of stuff. Let's say that you are interested in trying out high-altitude balloon launches. You've never done that before. Maybe you saw somebody do one at a Hamfest, and you're interested. Well, here is a section in Chapter 16, which is about amateur radio data platforms, and they've got a section here on high-altitude balloons, how you construct them, what they're made out of. A little further up in here is a section that gives you the FAA rules, that like things that you have to follow if you're going to launch a high altitude balloon. So some pretty helpful stuff there. Let's say maybe you got brave and you want to build a kit and you're looking at a kit that's got some surface mount components in it. Well, here's a construction technique section on surface mount technology. It explains how the technology works, talks about soldering techniques. It tells you how the sizes of the components work, tells you what kind of equipment you need, and then kind of shows you an example of some parts here, and then soldering basics, and you can do it with a soldering iron, and they talk about reflow and how reflow works, and they actually show some examples here. So if you've never done surface mount before, or you don't know much about it and you want to learn a little bit, there's information on that. And then finally, there's a whole, it's not really a chapter, it's kind of an appendix, although I think some of these projects are mentioned in some of the different chapters. There's a section that has construction projects for station accessories. So here's an external automatic antenna switch for use with Yaesu or ICOM radios. They show you a picture here. There's a whole description of how it operates, a little bit of a block diagram. It tells you how Yaesu and ICOM radios output data on what band they're on. And then this is not going to show up well unless I rotate it. Here's a whole schematic of the controls, and here's a schematic of all the relays. And then they show you some pictures of how it's built up and talk about how to build it. There's a parts list in here somewhere, and then it gives you an explanation. So if you want to be brave and do a non-kit from scratch project, they've got this and multiple others. There's an SWR meter. Trying to think of what else. There you go, Raspberry Pi server client for antenna rotators. So all kinds of cool stuff. I'm not going to go through these chapters, but there's a whole chapter on test equipment and measurement. Talks about the different types of test equipment you would be using for electronics and RF. And there's a whole chapter all about troubleshooting and just general troubleshooting techniques. That's just a sampling of some of the information that's in the handbook. It really is a handy reference. Over the next several months, or actually probably for most of this year, I'm going to go back to this occasionally and actually show you some places where I've used the handbook or will be using the handbook on some projects that I'm going to be working on, and show you where you can find stuff in it. Well, there's an introduction to the ARRL Handbook. Whether you're new to the hobby or you've been in it a long time, this is really a handy reference, and it's got a lot of good information in it. I hope some of you found this helpful. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Tom, WA2IVD, and this is Ham Radio A to Z.